So yesterday when I left off, I had a steering column in the car. Now it's over there on the ground in a pile of stuff. Yeah. Hey, welcome back to Russ Toter Garage, and I believe it is day 15, and it is yet another fiasco. So the problem I ran into was the angle from the steering column down to the power steering rack was too great. Basically, these U-joints will work at about 30 degrees, 35 maybe, and that's it. And the angle was so tight that you couldn't turn the steering wheel. It was binding up. So hopefully the mounts that I installed for that steering column I can still use, but I can't use a simple 2 U-joint setup. It's not going to work. So this is what I have to go to. This is a double U-joint, and this can do much steeper angles up to, well, double a joint. So probably up to about 70 degrees, which I don't need. I only need about 45. And yeah, this will work for what I need to do. At least I'm hoping it will. So the other issue with, well, an issue, but the only other thing brought up now, since I have to switch to that double U-joint setup in there, that brings up a couple things. One, I can't use the steering column I was going to use because that had a 1-inch 48 spline on the end. And the only 1-inch 48 double joint to 3/4 double D I could find is $150. Not spending $150 for a U-joint. So the one I got is probably $30 or $40, but it's 3/4 double D, 3/4 double D. So I got to either find a column in my pile of columns that I can modify, which will probably be the way it works out, or something that will go in as is, which is almost zero chance of that. The other thing is when you use a double joint in your steering column, it's basically like having 3 U-joints in the steering system. And anytime you do that, you have to add a support. You can't just put 3 joints in. The steering linkage will just flop around and have problems. So I have to go through my stash of parts and see if I have any support joints in stock. Otherwise, I'll have to buy one online. It's just another added piece to the puzzle for steering, and we'll go over that when I get to that point. All right, it pays to be a hoarder. I don't know where I got this one. It's a G-body column. Must have been out of a Monte Carlo or something. It's pretty much same dimensions as the one I started with. So that's good. If I need it, I can trim this down a little bit here and modify that to work. So I think I can make that one work. All right, well, it turns out that Monte Carlo column did not work because of the column shift. The rod that the would connect to the linkage to the transmission was too far inside the car to work with this setup. So, you know, if I went to a floor shifter, that would fix the problem, no problem at all. But I really want to keep a column shifter on this just to reduce, I don't know, clutter in the car, make sure 6 people can fit in it if you want to go cruising. I know floor shift is really not that big a deal, but I just didn't want to use one. So I think it's time to start playing. All right, here's what I'm thinking. Since I already designed everything right. Made mounts for this steering column to work originally. I noticed that the 1-inch shaft is not solid. I could take a short section of 3/4 double D and turn it down, press fit into this shaft, pin it that way, weld it perimeter, and I think I can do that, and that extra length will not hurt me as far as using that double joint. So that's what I'm going to do now. After I take the pups for their morning ride, I'm going to turn down a section of double D 3/4 shaft. All right, turning down a little section of double D shaft to fit inside that 1-inch 48 spline shaft on the end of that steering column. See if we can make this work. All right, there we go. Before I weld that in there and pin it, I'm going to put it in the car and make sure it works, because it is still removable. If I could weld a bolt on it and slide hammer it back out, it's pressed in there pretty good, but I think it's going to work. Let's see. All right, that didn't work either, and I probably have a fat lip now. See that? I had to get that piece of double D out of the steering column that I had pressed in there. So I had a vice grip on it, and I was whacking it with a hammer, knocking it out, and of course the hammer missed and hit myself right in the lip. Joys of building cars. So next plan. I cut the spline right off the end of the steering column, because what happened was with the stub on there, it was too long, and that made the angle too sharp even for the double joint. So I need to have just a 3/4 double D out of that. So it turns out this is a 3/4 hole. So I'm going to put a piece of double D shaft in there, pin it, weld it, and see if that works. All right, last attempt. Got a 3/4 D stub in there, welded in and pinned. Double safety, because it's your steering. You don't want to screw around. That was work. I think if I had to do this again, I would just buy the $150 U-joint. That's a lot of money for a U-joint. I cannot believe that nobody else makes it cheaper, but yeah. If I had the right part, I would have used it. But with the time crunch, and I knew I could make it work, let's see if this works. Last chance for this steering column. All right, just about to mock up the steering with the double U-joint there going down to the steering rack. And as I said before, with 3 joints in the system, you need a support for the rod, and that's where this comes into play. This is a 3/4 inch heim joint. It's actually slightly oversized, made that way so that the 3/4 shaft fits through it nicely and can slide. I'll have to make a little tab off the frame to locate this, and it'll hold that, and that'll keep the steering from flopping around. I'll show you what I mean. So I got this kind of just stuck together right here. But now with 3 joints in the system, this is all loosey-goosey. Everything moves around. It's not stable. Even if I have the mount on this column here where it belongs, this can all flop around. It doesn't work. You can see it just wants to flop around. So I need to put a brace on this heim joint here to hold that shaft fixed, so so all the linkage can turn without just flip-flopping all over the place. So I'm just going to make a temporary bracket for this. Well, I'll make a bracket, but I'm not going to install it yet. I'm going to clamp it down and just make sure that the steering works before I do anything permanent. Because so far, not much has worked out for me on this. All right, I'm actually going to kill day 15 now. Today's been a thrash. Very little went right today. It's okay now. I think I have it all figured out and it works. Steering works okay. I just took it all apart so I can do all the the final setting of the set screws and the Loctite and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not doing that today. It's starting to rain again in a beat. So sometimes things go smooth, sometimes they don't. This one kicked my ass for a while, but it's okay. We got past it. We'll get it done. So I'll come back on day 16, show you what I ended up with and how the look's finished. Hey, welcome back to the 51 Hudson build. Today is day 16, and hopefully by the end of this video, even though I'm starting late, I will have the steering finished. So yesterday, day 15, I had struggled with the steering to come up with a solution that would work. Once again, design of this car just kicking me because the steering rack is so far back compared to where the cowl is. If I just put like a Camaro clip on this, it would have been a 5-minute steering deal. Well, not 5-minute, but you get the point. It would not have been what this is, but I think I finally have it figured out. I had it all mocked up at the end of the day yesterday, and I forgot to video it, and I blew it apart. But I'll put it back together piece by piece, and you'll see what it looks like when it's all in the car. So as far as steering column, like I said yesterday, I went back to my original column. That was the plan. I have converted it to 3/4 double D on the end. Got my double joint on here. I relocated my angle arm for the shift linkage. And last night I set the column in the car where I wanted, and I made a plate that will sit up against the firewall to seal up, obviously, the hole in the firewall and be the lower steering column mount as well. So I welded it right to the column so it's rigid, and that will work good. I'll probably put some foam tape around the perimeter, but I don't know if I'm going to do it right now because this column is going to have to come back out to get painted. If I don't have time to do it, it'll have to be after the deadline. But right now, I'm going to install it as is and keep moving forward on the steering one piece at a time. Okay, steering column is mounted. So that looks good there. Show you underneath. There's our simple plate. Seals up the firewall and acts as the lower mount. And yeah, looks good. So it's steering wheel is centered in the gauge cluster, and everything moves good. So that's the first part. So next part of the steering will be the connection from the double joint down to the steering rack, which is basically just a piece of double D shaft. Oh yeah, goes through the support bearing and then down into the steering rack. Just got that. Grinding wheels do damage. So when doing these your steering linkage here, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Set screws will be used to hold the shaft inside, and what you want to do is mark where the set screws are going to go in, and then drill a dimple into the double D shaft so that the set screw will actually locate into the shaft. You don't need it to be real deep. You just want it to be that so when you crank this down, it actually goes into the shaft a little bit. It's just a little extra safety, and let that set screw do its business, because otherwise it can just slide on the shaft. At least if you locate it in, it's more secure. The dimple's drilled. Now it's time to assemble it. All right, we got steering. There's the finished assembly. Double U-joint at the top. Support bearing with the brace that is triangulated to the frame so it won't flex. And then another U-joint down at the rack. So that is it. I have it somewhat set up that with the steering wheel straight. The car I think is straight, but I have to make sure I may be off a couple splines. So I did not lock tight the very bottom set screws, so I can take that apart. One other thing is when you cut your size for your double D shaft, make it long enough that if something did loosen up, it can't fall out. If those set screws back off and that double D shaft falls down, it'll still be captured inside those joints. You would just feel some slop in the steering that wasn't there before, but it won't fall out and let you crash the car. So keep that in mind too. You want them long enough that they don't fall out, but not too long that they bind up in the U-joints. All right, I got other stuff to do today, so that is going to be the end of day 16. I think when I come back, let's see, probably do some exhaust work on this side before I put the power brake booster in, just because I have the clearance. And that's the next project to do. All right, thanks for following along, and we will see you soon.